Tonight, Superman meets his greatest foe yet, TV news. Batman fights the Scarecrow for like the 10th time in the same book. And I will continue to gush about iVampire until every last single one of you has read it. All that and more tonight on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 43 of the Not So New 52. I am your host and this is the part where I say something somewhat personal and yet still professional enough to make you feel like not only are you listening to somebody who knows what they're talking about, but you're also listening to a friend. Now shut up because I have a lot of comics to get through and I need to get this done quickly. So, DC Comics had 14 releases this week on June 27th, 2012, and they were the number 10 issues of Batman the Dark Knight, Superman, Green Lantern, New Guardians, Aquaman, Justice League, The Flash, The Fury of Firestorm, The Savage Hawkman, All-Star Western, Voodoo, Teen Titans, iVampire, and Justice League Dark. Additionally, we have the number 2 issue of Batman Incorporated to get through, and I'm just going to go ahead and spoil this right now. Book of the Week, iVampire. If you haven't been listening to me talk about that, listen to me talk about that. I'm serious. It's the best. But for now, we're going to get into Batman-related stuff with our first comic of the week. Batman Incorporated number 2, written by Grant Morrison, art by Chris Burnham. This is essentially just a backstory on Talia al Ghul, in case you are unaware of her. The issue opens up at a World Aid sort of concert thing, and Ra's al Ghul is talking to some hippie chick being like, hey, isn't it weird that these millionaire rock stars aren't putting forward any money and they're asking us poor people to do it? And she's like, totally. And then they apparently have sex and have a kid, and that kid is Talia. And we see essentially 2 different plots going on of Talia's upbringing, which is the primary focus, and a modern day what's happening right now. So the modern day what's happening right now is Talia comes into Raz's lair, and he's like, hey, there's my little girl. I need you to not fight Batman right now because I have my own stuff going on, and I know that you were doing your whole, Leviathan and Medusa stuff, but just no. And she's like, what are you going to do about it? And he's like, I'm just going to keep you here because why not? And she's basically telling him, like, you were an awful father because you gave me everything I ever asked for, but all I really wanted was a mother. And intercut throughout all that, we got a whole bunch of different shots of her past, of her basically being trained by ninjas, going out doing all that stuff, until one day she's home and sees her father coming home just bloodied and beaten, and all the his goons are like, Lady Talia, please stay back, you're not supposed to see this. But they bring him to a Lazarus pit, and I guess a handmaiden or something explains see, your father's gonna be fine, he's gonna come back to life, and he shoots up out of the thing, and she runs over like, daddy. And then he's, crazy with the Lazarus Pit juice, so he just backhands her, which causes some trust issues, obviously. So she goes through more and more of her life, and her father's buying her things just like a blimp and a secret lair and a horse, just because why not? And finally one day, she manages to sneak away from her guards to go talk to this fortune teller lady. And the fortune teller is like, oh, come take a look at my star chart. We'll see what's in your sign. This here is Perseus, and in his hand is the head of Medusa. And Medusa's right eye is a special star. It's called the Demon Star. It's also known as Al Ghul. And she's like, my name's Al Ghul. And she's like, you gotta be a badass bitch like Medusa. Don't let any man get you down, especially not your dad. By the way, I'm probably your mom. And then as she's explaining this whole thing here, where Talia was told that her mother died in childbirth, one of Raz's goons comes in and holds a knife to this woman's throat, and he's like, what's she telling you, Talia? And she's like, nothing. So at some point, again, Raz buys Talia a secret lair, And as he's exploring it with her, some assassins come and attack them. Apparently from some guy named the Sensei, who's the father of all assassins that Ra's al Ghul is now in a battle with. Sure, whatever. And Talia's basically like, hey, what happened to that fortune teller lady? Where's my mother? And he's like, that's not your mother. Your mother's dead. You need to believe me on this one. Okay, bye. So, cut to sometime later, Talia's at college, and she's approached by Damien Dark, some other random-ass guy, who's like, by the way, I'm kidnapping you because of my battle with Ra's al Ghul. And she's like, yeah, alright, sure, whatever. So she gets on a train with this guy, and basically he's just saying his whole plan, and he's like, I'm going to use you as bait or whatever. And she's like, my father and I don't really see eye to eye. Also, why do you think I let you take me? And she's like, you didn't let me. I took you. And it's like, yeah, right, sure, that's what happened. And he's just getting more and more unnerved by her the whole time. Until finally he's like, all right, we're getting off this train like now. Like, we're not even waiting for the next station. So he grabs her and takes her off. Meanwhile, apparently this entire time they're having this conversation, there's a little old lady sitting in front of them. And it turns out that little old lady was Batman in disguise. So he attacks Damien, he frees Talia, and cut back to modern day where she's just like, you orchestrated that whole thing with Batman, me falling for him, just so you could have your perfect heir. And we see back in the day how apparently Talia was already calling him out of like, yeah, if I have a kid with Batman, I know you're not just going to pass your empire onto him. You're going to use him in order to extend your own life because the Lazarus pits are drying up. So Batman and Ra's have a shirtless sword fight in the desert, which is canon. That actually happened. And seemingly Batman's defeated, but then Talia brings him back from the dead. And then Ra's is genuinely scared by him. They share a night of passion. That's Talia and Batman, not Ra's. And Talia's like, oh, I'm sure I'm pregnant with your child. And Batman's like, wait a minute, hold on, what? Because he was drugged. And she has Damien, more or less. Batman wants nothing to do with her. Until finally, at some nebulous point before all this, Damien was introduced to Batman. It's like, this is your son. Now Damien chooses where to go, with you or with me. And he wants them to be together, but he obviously goes with Batman in the end. So apparently all of this, including Robin being shot in the last issue, was all part of her plan, but she knows that he's not dead, like that it was all part of some ruse and that the game is only just beginning. And it turns out that Talia is actually taking Ra's hostage in his own base by using this massively huge assassin guy that just kills Raz's assassins no problem. And he's like, all right, well, now I'm the main threat and we can continue on with this book as intended. And that's it. It was good. It was solid. It wasn't a terrible issue by all means, but it definitely felt like the sort of thing of like, oh yeah, this is a reboot and we kind of need to explain how did we get here, because we're just jumping into the middle of this whole Batman Incorporated plot. So it's necessary and it's not bad, but it does feel like just a grinding halt of like, this probably should have been like an issue 0 or something. This should have been something that came before we even got issue 1, just to explain like, here's how we got to this point so far and this is what's going on with Talia's plan. So beyond that, it's fine. It's not great. It's not blowing me back. It is literally just for people who don't know Talia, here's who Talia is. Art is also great throughout. No real qualms on that. My only weird thing is that they did this thing where they showed Batman's reflection in Raz's eyes, but in order to do so, they also like didn't show his pupils. So it just looks like he has cartoon-esque Batman-shaped pupils. Very strange. Beyond that, everything else is pretty okay. So yeah, overall, I'm going to give this one I give it a 7. Just, it's okay. It's not great. It's just saying, here's who Talia is. Let's get on with the rest of the book. Batman the Dark Knight, number 10, written by Gregg Hurwitz, art by David Finch. It's another Scarecrow story. Okay, so we open up with this guy sewing his mouth shut because, of course, he's got to be creepy. And he goes down to this basement where he has this little girl kidnapped, and doses her with fear gas. Because, again, we're doing another Scarecrow story. So that was just a teaser. Then we go over to Wayne Manor, where there's a new love interest named Natalia, who is a concert pianist. And she's playing for Bruce, and apparently she's got some concerto on New Year's Eve, which is coming up very soon. So this is set either in the past or the future. And Bruce is like, oh, wow, you are just incredible. Just so amazing. I wish I had some sort of talent like yours. And as they're just back and forth flirting, Alfred comes in and tells him, like, oh, they found another child, Master Bruce. To which Natalia is already apparently used to Bruce just saying, I have to go at random times, and she's just pre-predicting it now. So then we see this young girl from the first scene dropped off on a city street. Cops have eyes on both the girl and the kidnappers, and Gordon tells them, all right, one of you on the kidnappers, one of you on the kid. And then as soon as the cops start following the kidnappers, they start zooming like through traffic, like literally ramming cars out of the way. And they're speeding down the road. Cops are giving chase, and it looks like they're about to crash headfirst into a first floor level maternity ward on this hospital with big glass windows, which just seems like the dumbest thing, but sure. And as they're about to hit, Batman swoops in, kicks the driver out of the car, and swerves the car out of the way. They interrogate the kidnapper, and he's like, I didn't kidnap the kid. I was hired to drop him off. I was just some guy. I'm just a hired man by the Hollow Man. It's Scarecrow, though. Like, I don't know who this Hollow Man guy is. Maybe there's a secondary villain, but it was definitely just Scarecrow. So anyway, him and Gordon, Batman and Gordon, talk up on the roof, and basically they're like, God, they're attacking kids now, and we're not finding stuff out fast enough. And Batman's like, dude, we'll get there. Chill. Like, we're gonna follow the leads and do what we can. He's like, it's not enough. And Gordon actually ends up Batmaning Batman, where he just disappears where Batman didn't notice. So then Batman goes to Child Protective Services and tries talking to the little girl. Her name is Claire. And she's just... That's the thing that Gordon was saying, was that when they're returned, when these kids come back, they are just gone. Like, mentally, they are just, like, wiped. They don't speak. They don't interact. They're just blank. So Batman goes and tries to get some information. He's just asking questions very kindly to this kid. But the kid still starts crying, having to, like, think about it. So Batman just sits down next to her and holds her hand for a while. Very nice scene. So then we go back to the Batcave, and Damian is standing behind Batman in his chair. And he's just like, hey, Dad, you know how over in my book, Batman and Robin, I've been, like, having problems with killing people, and you tell me to stop? I just want you to know I am listening to you, and I am working very hard on it, and I hope that you are very appreciative of that, because it really is difficult for me. And then Batman goes, huh? Did you say something? To which Damian is very rightfully upset by that. So then we go over to Jim Gordon, who's going back home, and he's just recounting, like, you know, there are rules. Like, I live in a nice little planned neighborhood, and there is a homeless guy, and sometimes I invite him in, but he never invites himself because those are the rules. And there are rules to crime as well. And one major thing here is that you don't get these innocent kids involved. Like, that's against the rules. You don't do that. But as he walks into his apartment and he starts taking a shower, he gets dosed with fear gas. And he stumbles around his house. He sees, like, the homeless guy. And as he stumbles back in, he sees his daughter Barbara, who's been shot in the stomach, who's like, why didn't you save me from the Joker? And he's like, I'm sorry. And then his son James Jr. shows up and is like, why didn't you save me from being crazy? And he's like, I'm sorry. So then we go to back across town. Natalia's practicing her concerto, and she keeps on messing up this one note, and she's, like, so upset over it. Bruce shows up, and he's just like, oh, hey, you're not dressed. Are you ready to go? And he's just like, I can't get this right. Could you sit here and just be supportive of me? And he's just like, it's not exactly the biggest event. It's just this thing. He's like, yeah, but it matters to me. And they basically get into a conversation about how Bruce is never there for the daily stuff. Like, he's here for all the events. He's technically there, but he's not here for the part that actually makes the relationship a relationship. So Natalia just closes the door on him and walks away. So then we get back to Jimmy's apartment. I say Jimmy. I don't think he's ever been called Jimmy. Jim Gordon's apartment. And Scarecrow, in shadow, so we're not supposed to know it's him, but it's clearly him, comes up to this homeless guy who has a cup full of pencils And he has the homeless guy write, between the emotion and the response falls the shadow. Okay? And so he walks into Jim Gordon's apartment and was just like, hey, don't worry, I'll make it stop for now, but we're just getting started, Jim Gordon. And that's where we leave off. The first arc was about a new strain of fear toxin being used by Bane, but still Scarecrow involved. Then we had like a single issue that was focused, I'm pretty sure, just on Scarecrow again. And now we have another Scarecrow. We changed love interests before we changed the villain we're focusing on. And if this is just a Scarecrow book of Batman versus Scarecrow, fine, whatever. I wasn't sold on that premise. Like, you didn't tell me that up front, that that's what it was going to be, because Scarecrow kind of seemed like secondary character of the first arc when Bane was introduced. But okay, if we're just doing Scarecrow constantly, that's fine, but like, what are we doing? Like, why is it any different this day? I don't know. It's so weird to me that we're still doing a Scarecrow story. We've been through like 3 arcs now. This is the 3rd, and it's still Scarecrow. Art-wise, it's fine. There's no problems with it at all. It's nothing that's really blowing me away. Some of the fear toxin scenes are pretty creative looking, but it's nothing that's like super amazing. Everything else is just, fine. Writing, whatever. It's just the premise as a whole. I'm like, what are we doing here? So overall, I guess I gotta give it like a 6 or something, because like, honestly, I'm sick of, like, if this is just a Scarecrow book, then lead with that. Make it like one large continuous arc of like doing this thing. But they keep on setting up like, here's what Scarecrow's doing, and Batman completely beat him. And now Scarecrow's doing something else, and Batman completely beats him again. Like, make it a whole long, drawn out thing. But no, instead it's just, here's what Scarecrow is up to this week. Superman number 10, written and art by Dan Jurgens. Last issue left off with Superman fighting some woman who could not be touched but still punches very hard. And also, some random reporter said that a guy named Spence Becker is the true identity of Superman. So there's a lot going on. So, open up Metropolis. Lois Lane is busting into Morgan Edge's office saying, like, how dare you run that story after I rejected it? To which Morgan's like, I have multiple networks and you're in charge of one of them. Like, I'm running it on the other network. You literally have no say here. And she's like, like, I wouldn't turn it down if it was a good story. There were many flaws with it. And he's like, guess we'll find out soon enough. So then we see Superman still mid-fight, whereas it's coming out over the news that, oh, his real name is Spence Becker, and he has a wife and a child, and he lives at this address and his social security number. Not that far, but it's still very in-depth for all of the opening facts. So he tries to take out this girl because he figures, okay, she's able to change her density so that I can't, like, hit her, but she can still hit me when she needs to. So maybe she, like, has to have her feet solid so that she can stand on the ground. So he tries melting the ground around her feet, and she's like, that's not going to work. No reason why it doesn't work, just not going to work. So she reveals that her whole tragic backstory of she was raised in an abusive household by her dad, and she just wanted a locket that has her mother's picture in it, and that's literally all that she was trying to do, was just get this locket. And as she's explaining her sad backstory, some like people, I think from Star Labs or something, they show up with a big gun, try shooting at her, obviously doesn't work. To which then Superman's like, oh, you want that locket? I'm just going to take that locket then. That's not able to turn incorporeal. So he grabs the locket, to which she throws a punch, and in doing so, breaks the locket. And so she's very upset by this. She's overhearing on the news that, hey, he's got a wife and kids, this Spence Becker guy. So she's like, oh, well, in that case, I'm just going to go and take away the thing that you love the most. Ha 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 ha. So then we cut over to Spence Becker, who's just trying to explain to his co-workers, like, I'm not Superman. They're like, sure, that's exactly what Superman would say. And he gets a call from his wife, and he's just like, honey, this is not a good time. And she's like, yeah, it's not for us either. There are news reporters on our front lawn. And his kid's like, is daddy Superman? He's like, no, daddy's not Superman. Shut up. So at this point, Superman's getting up from his punch, and Lois and Jimmy are there, and they're like, hey, do you want to comment on the whole secret identity thing? And he's like, no, I'm not. That's not me. Clearly not. I'm here, and Superman is a full-time job. I don't have a secret identity. I am literally just Superman. And they make a passing reference of things that are going on in Grant Morrison's Action Comics. But of course, those things happened like 5 years ago in continuity, so he just mentions that he had to fake his death before. Anyway, so Superman flies off because he realizes, oh, they're going to endanger that man's family. I need to go save him. And Lois talks to Jimmy for a little bit about, like, do you really think Superman doesn't have a secret identity? At which point Spence Becker shows up and is just like, hey, you're Lois Lane, right? You got to issue a retraction. This is all some sort of mistake. And he's like, it's kind of weird that you showed up just after Superman left. Anyway, cut over to Becker's house, and the reporter guy showed up, Vic Barnes, and he literally just barges his way into their house being like, here's all the ways that I knew it was Superman. Remember, he just came from that submarine, and when I saw him, he was wet. And he's like, that's my husband he works close to a gym. He was coming out of the gym showers. And he's like, likely story. So they're just arguing over that. And at that point, the woman shows up. I don't think she even has a name. But the woman shows up and it's just like, I'm going to take what Spence Becker loves the most. Haha. And she's about to attack. But then at that point, Superman comes in, saves the family. And Vic Barnes is the one who gets backhanded by the woman. All the reporters are standing outside and they're like, oh my God, this woman must have tracked this family down through the news and is going to attack them. And almost has a brief brush with the fact of, are we responsible? No, I'm not going to think about that. So then they move on and they show, all right, I'm going to destroy everything if I can't get my hands on the family. And then Superman comes up, busts through the ground, and as she's throwing punches, she's like, hey, I fixed your locket. Yeah, I heat visioned it back together. Your photo's fine. Here you go. And she's like, okay, well, that's pretty much all I wanted. Bye. And he's like, wait, hold on. We can get you help. We can make it. You say you can't control your powers. Like, we can just get you fixed. And she's like, nah, I'm good. Bye. And she just phases away. To which point, then Superman comes face to face with Spence Becker, and they're just like, how could this have happened, Superman? And Superman's like, the crazy, irresponsible media is to blame. That's practically a quote. And so Spence says hi to his kids or whatever. Vic Barnes comes up and is like, no, it must be a trick, a clone or a robot. So then he gets knocked out again by Spence. And then Wonder Woman comes up and is just like, are you sure you don't have a secret? Or did I say Wonder Woman? Lois Lane. Are you sure you don't have a secret identity, Superman? And he's like, nope, I just go back to my home. And he flies away. To which point Jimmy's like, man, I bet he's got this sweet-ass palace. I bet he has a harem. I know I'd have a harem if I was Superman. And Lois is like, that's too much, Jimmy. Too much. So anyway, cut to Russia. Remember last issue how Superman saved that sub? Well, the Russians now are like, oh, it's a good thing Superman didn't look inside of our sub. Otherwise, he would have found this super powerful weapon thing. But we've delivered it here. And, oh my God, the scientists opened it and now they're all dead. And now I'm being attacked too. Oh my God. Anyway, it's fine. It's like, all right, yeah. It's the fact that woman, I don't think even got a name. Like, I scanned over it several times. I may have just forgotten, but I genuinely think the villain part there, the background part of, oh, this woman needs her locket, and Superman is misunderstanding the situation, but then he fixes it and blah, blah, blah. What this honestly feels like to me is that Dan Jurgens had two ideas for two separate stories, neither of which was enough to fill a full story, so he just merged them together, where he was like, Superman will be in the middle of this fight, and also his identity will be revealed, and I'll link them because the woman will be wanting revenge. There we go, perfect. It just felt very disparate in terms of storytelling. Art-wise, fine. I give him credit of Spence Barnes, or Becker, whatever his name is, looks similar enough to Superman that I can see like the reason people would mistake them, but is still different enough that I didn't have to question whether or not I was looking at Superman or him. Like, I give him credit on that of similar but different enough. Beyond that, it's just a stock standard. It feels almost like filler. Like, it's just a stock standard little like, oh, here's Superman doing a thing. Anyway, bye. So I'm going to go ahead and give it I'll give it a 6.5. It's fine. It's not great, but, you know, not every Superman story has been or will be. Green Lantern New Guardians number 10, written by Tony Bedard, art by Tomas Giorello. Last issue we had the entirety of the Blue Lantern planet being attacked by Blue Beetle scarabs, and this issue opens up with Kyle Rayner and Fatality and Arkillo all arriving to the planet as it's being attacked, and they're just like, well, let's get down in there and fight. And just as a reminder, I mean, I'll just briefly go over this. Arkillo, he has a new ring. It's his own separate thing from the rest of the Yellow Lantern Corps, which is currently depowered. And this one is powerful, but sputtery. Like, it's not always able to be used. So he's overcharging it a bit too much during this fight, and it goes out on him very briefly. So this issue is basically just one extended fight scene of, like, how long can we hold out? The Blue Lanterns all managed to come together, and they're like, okay, we managed to get one of those scarabs to see, like, the error of his ways. What if we all join forces and just do that to all the scarabs in batch? To which they do. Some of them it doesn't work on, but enough of them it does, that it holds off for just like a second. But the one that realizes, like, hey, for some reason our entire group is immobilized, fire from the skies. So one of the Reach ships just blasts down a massive fire cannon and blows out all the Blue Lanterns, letting all the pairs or all the scarabs recontrol their hosts again. And at that point, they're just like, okay, we're screwed. What are we going to do? And Sam Walker's like, fight until the end. It's never hopeless. All will be well. To which then the Guardians come in and start wrecking shop as well. Once Kyle Rayner shows up, well, Kyle's up in space defending from, like, laser fire, but then he goes down to Earth once he to Odom once he realizes that, you know, oh, the Blue Lanterns, they get a super boost from me. I should probably be down there. So he goes down. They all get a super boost. They start being able to use constructs and whatnot, like attack mode more or less. And Kyle is basically like, look, they've already got half the planet encased. They are harvesting this planet. Like, you're not going to be able to take the Blue Lantern battery with you. You have to get your guys off this planet. And Sam Walker's like, no, it's never hopeless. And he's like, yeah, like, okay, look, wherever you go, as long as there is life, there is hope, right? Cool, great. You need to go, dude. So St. Walker very begrudgingly sends out a bunch of constructs to rope up all of his Blue Lanterns. He gets them off planet. And he's like, look, go, be safe. I will meet up with you later. Like, we just make sure that they don't get you, because we'll deal with what happens. And they're like, we can't go without our leader. What are we supposed to do? And he's like, look, someone led these things to this planet, and I'm like 95% sure it's Larfleeze. So I'm going to go kick his ass. I will meet up with you all later. And that is pretty much where it leaves off. It's a very good issue. It's just very brief to explain, because it is quite literally just more of the fight scene, but, like, because it's disjointed plots, it's easy enough to explain. So yeah, it's the Reach have effectively taken over the entire planet. I don't know how they're going to get it back. It seems like the Blue Lantern battery's also been very heavily attacked. So shorter issue, but no, it's solid. It's definitely an interesting. It's good. It is good. I wouldn't say that it's doing anything super incredible, but I do like the idea of them pretty much knocking out. I mean, this is across every book in the Green Lantern mythos, but they're knocking out the Lantern Corps pretty much one by one right now. The Red Lanterns in their book are out. The Sinestro Corps is out. Now the Blue Lanterns are out. And they also, in the Green Lantern book, knocked out the Indigo Tribe. Briefly, they're back now, but they still did that. I like that as an overarching plot to the entire Green Lantern thing of just every Lantern Corps is being targeted somehow for something. And I feel like since this is a book that collects all of the cores, this is going to be where it more or less resolves. I could be wrong on that, but I like that idea. I like that setup to it. It feels like a good... It's bridging between all these different books very well. So yeah, no, I enjoy it. I think it's a solid issue, solid read. I'd go ahead and give it I'm going to say 7.5. It's very close to an 8, but I'm going to say 7.5 just because it does read super quickly. It's not a whole lot of substance there. I think I'm also just a sucker for the Blue Lantern Corps. I think I like them. I think their optimism and hopefulness is very endearing to me. So 7.5 for this one, and we'll see if we continue with the Blue Lanterns next issue or if we just move on to attacking Larfleeze. Aquaman number 10, written by Geoff Johns, art by Ivan Reis. Last issue we left off with Black Manta and Aquaman squaring off to fight, and it being revealed that Aquaman killed Black Manta's father. This issue picks up with another one of the others. The Operative, as they are later revealed, is breaking into Black Manta's lair and is basically just looking for information as to how he managed to track down all of the others. And he goes on the computer, and I can't tell if it's a superpower or if it's like just a holographic keyboard, but regardless, he can't find anything on the computer about it. So he breaks into a safe using his little golden trinket thing, where he just touches it to it and it seems to open up any lock. Interesting enough. And as he looks inside and finds some files, some of Black Manta's goons get the drop on him, but he uses his kung fu and crazy gymnastics to fight against all these guys, and he's like, oh, you brought this on yourselves, having worked for Black Manta. But he does take a shot to the stomach, and he has to bail out through the window. He's on the comms with somebody, and he's like, all right, I need you to catch me. And apparently it's this guy who's flying just this airplane really low down close to the city that they're in. And Operative fires off a magnetic line and gets back inside. And we see that inside is this whole like actual home, like it's just a straight up living room with like a fireplace and everything. And so he sits down and he takes off his masks, and we see that Operative is actually like 80 years old. Like, he's just an old man, and the entire reason that he's able to do these things is the suit. Like, the suit has abilities and he's just kind of piloting it. And his grandson comes up and he's like, hey, you're too old, Gramps. You need to retire the suit. And he's like, I'll retire when I find a suitable replacement, which isn't you, Aaron. So get back in the cockpit. God damn it. So they're going to find Aquaman. Meanwhile, Stephen Shin is still talking to Mera, who's basically like, why should I trust you, Stephen? You say that Aquaman killed him. Why should I trust you? And he's just like, he didn't tell you about any of the others, so clearly he's keeping secrets from you, Mera. And then we cut back and forth between the dialogue of Stephen Shin and Mera and a battle scene between Aquaman and the others versus Black Manta. And it's a big fight. It's like nothing is really particularly done during it, but it's just a big fight scene. Prisoner of War catches back up with the rest of them, and they're all just ready to go fight Mera. And then we see what actually happened that night at like Aquaman killing Black Manta's dad. And his father was attacked by Black Manta or something. It's not directly shown yet. And as his father is lying in a hospital bed later on, he whispers something into Arthur's ear, telling him that he has to do something once he's gone. And then we see Arthur out on this ship in the middle of nowhere, and he finally found his ship. And when he went up onto the deck, he thought that Manta was all alone and he was going to attack Manta. Someone fires a harpoon at him. He immediately turns around and cracks the neck of it, believing it to be Manta. But it turns out it was actually Manta's dad. And at that moment, Manta re-arrives back on the ship, sees Aquaman holding the dead body of Manta's dad, and was just like, all right, circle of vengeance. They're constantly going to be attacking each other. So Manta and Aquaman are still fighting. Manta fires off a shot from his eyes. and it actually manages to burn Aquaman a little bit. But he's like, oh, no matter what happens, it's up to me whether or not Manta lives or dies. This is on me. To which Manta then takes advantage of the distraction, fires a harpoon at Yawara's little globe thing around her neck that allows her to teleport, steals it, and then yoinks himself out of the scene right to where Steven, Shin, and Mera are. And he's like, Steven? He's like, Manta? And that's the issue. Pretty quick, pretty, just most of it was that fight scene in the middle there. But I did like how it read in terms of it's setting up more of the others. It's set up this time Operative. Last time it was the Prisoner of War. It's setting them up one issue at a time. It's taking its time with it, making sure we understand what each one of them is capable of doing, even though I'm a little bit shaky still on Prisoner of War. And it's also still setting up the menace of Black Manta in a new way, because we haven't really been that introduced to him, but it's setting up like, okay, here's his goons, he's powerful enough to like burn Aquaman, he's able to kill these people. Like, it's just taking its time. It's a slow roll. And now that Black Manta can teleport and go wherever, and he's literally right next to Mera, I sense a cool fight scene there as well. My only concern is that we get too bogged down with the cool fight scenes and we don't really do anything besides that. I do like when it takes some time to talk about things and like explore these characters. So hopefully it takes some time for that. But this particular issue I did enjoy enough. I'll go ahead and give it an 8. I think it is extremely well done. It's not, I don't know, 8 now that I'm saying it feels a little bit high, but I stand by it just because compared to other comics, this is quality writing. It's very high quality art. It's very well done. And I should be comparing this against other comics, but it isn't doing anything that amazing for Aquaman. So it's good by any comic standards. It's just kind of average for its own standards, if that makes any sense. So still looking forward to seeing how this turns out. Hopefully the others stay interesting long enough to finish out the arc. The Flash, number 10, written by Francis Manapul and Brian Buccellato, art by Marcus Toe. I genuinely felt like I missed an issue here, and it's very dense, so I'm just going to move very quickly through it, no pun intended. So, 2 years ago, Central City, there's this guy named Claudio. He's calling up his brother named Marco, basically saying, hey, I know that I said I could handle this job, but I don't think I can. Can you please come to Central City and help me? Love you, bye. And like pretty much as he hangs up, there's a knock on the door, and then there's also Marco calling him back. And he's like, oh, Marco, glad I could have you. And as soon as he opens up the door, he's just riddled with bullets. And Marco hears it over the phone, and he's wondering what's going on. Marco is Weather Wizard, by the way. Just putting that's in, you're going to need to know that. So then we cover the Flash and how he has been doing, like, he had to fight gorillas, and he went to the Speed Force, and he came back, and Dr. Elias is now turned against vigilantes, which isn't explored at all in this. But regardless, Patty went to Nicaragua in order to investigate this Claudio murder, and then she was captured, and she hasn't been heard from in a while. So he's going to Nicaragua in order to take out Weather Wizard because Weather Wizard is in Nicaragua. Okay, got it? Cool. So anyway, they're fighting, and Weather Wizard summons like just a flood that's moving its way downhill into a nearby village. And Flash has to do a superhero thing where he's using his draft behind him when he runs to funnel all the water through the village without it actually hitting any houses. And he gets it all out into a lake, and he saves the day. Meanwhile, Marco, Weather Wizard, is with Claudio's wife. Now that he's gone, he's dead. He's with her wife, who's, married into the family, trying to take care of that. And Weather Wizard basically like, he keeps on asking about Patty Spivot. I don't know Patty Spivot. I don't have Patty Spivot. Who the hell is Patty Spivot? And the wife is like, I don't know. It beats me. But then she sends a text saying, kill them all. And we see a cut over to a little village, a little cottage out of town where Patty is being held hostage because she was asking too many questions about Claudio's murder. And she's also being held there with some other guy who was basically the cleaner for the drug family that Marco was a part of, and Claudio was in charge of at that point. And he basically just lays out the whole thing of Claudio's wife killed Claudio because Claudio was going to do a peace treaty with some other family that would have cost them land, and therefore, in order to keep their family standing, he had to go. And so this guy found out about it, and he's been held captive here ever since. It's been 2 years, but regardless, that's what he did. So anyway, as long as he managed to hide evidence that would prove that she did it, and if he is killed, it will come to light. So that's the only reason he's kept alive. And at that point, then the doors open and they're all loading up guns, saying like, oh, at least they won't kill us, right? Gulp. So anyway, Flash is still chasing after Weather Wizard, and he's firing off lightning bolts, and he's like, yeah, no, lightning's kind of my thing. So he just knocks them out, takes them out of the car. Car goes over to the edge of a cliff. He's like, all right, tell me, where's Patty? And he's like, I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. To which then the wife chimes in, and I'll see if I can get her name at some point here. But regardless, she's like, I have them. Sorry. Yeah, it was me. They're over at that village over there. And he's like, if anything's happened to them, I will come back for you both. So Flash zooms off, takes care of the gunman, and he's standing on this village, like this little cottage thing, overlooking this massive field of what I can only assume is like opium or like pot. And he's like, well, let's just set fire to it. Like, we'll let it burn for a little while. So then Marco's talking to the wife. I really should figure out her name. Anyway, talking to the wife and basically saying like, why did you have them? And then she explains the whole thing of how she killed them to save the family, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, to save the family, you killed my brother, you killed your husband? Nah, that's not how this is going to go. And he calls down a lightning bolt because also apparently whenever he uses his powers, it makes him feel emotions. So like the rain makes him depressed and like he wanted to kill himself for a while. So he's been pretty suicidal already. Regardless, he calls down a lightning bolt that he's hoping will just kill them both. Then we cut over to Flash, who's about to tell Patty the truth. He's like, there's something I need to tell you, Patty. And Patty's like, me first, Flash. Every time I look at you, I can't help but be reminded of how Barry died, and it's all your fault. And then Flash is like, well, I better go put out this fire. So he goes away. Anyway, Marco managed to survive. Flash just goes on for like 4 panels here about like, I can't put her in any more danger. I can't. She's so important, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, Marco survived, and he's greeted by a floating woman who's Lisa Snart. It's Captain Cold's sister from like 4 issues ago. And she's standing here, and she's like, oh, call me Glider. Time to get up. Time to come home, Marco. So, you know, doing something with the Rogues. I know enough of the Rogues to know they're doing something with the Rogues. So genuinely, if it wasn't for the fact that they spent like a full splash page at the beginning of this, just breaking down everything that happened over the past 3 issues, making it clear that I didn't miss anything, I would have thought I missed something. Because like Patty was just on a plane going to Nicaragua. Like we didn't even know the murder she was talking about. And there was 1 page that mentioned Weather Wizard in the last issue. This felt so completely like, all right, we're just, come on, moving ahead, moving ahead, moving ahead. It wasn't a bad issue, but it was so condensed. Like this felt like this was the capper issue to like 3 issues, and then we just ditched the first issue, took like 4 pages from the second issue, and shoved it all into the third. Ridiculously fast here. So, bad, no. Good read, meh. So I'll go ahead. Art-wise, it's good. I like Weather Wizard as the character they're setting him up here, but it does also feel so rushed that I don't really know if I like it in moving forward. I don't know. It's not enough to make an informed decision, I guess is what I'm basically saying. So I'm just going to go ahead and rate this one a 7. I was debating 6.5, but I'm going to make it a 7. And hopefully we can, pun fully intended, slow down a little bit here. The Fury of Firestorm, number 10, written by Ethan Van Sciver and Joe Harris, art by Yildiray Cinar. Last issue left off with that weird little crossover thing with Justice League International, and this issue picks up with Posar watching over footage of that weird little crossover thing. And it shows, seemingly from the perspective of Firehawk, like the fight, so that could be something. But regardless, it shows how they merged and became this bigger thing. And someone named Zastrow is talking to Pozar, saying like, we have to stop them, we have to do whatever, blah blah blah. And basically Pozar is just telling them, okay, here's the deal. I'm going to go deal with this. And he's like, you're not able to. And he's like, right, but I am, and I'm going to, regardless of what you say. So he just blows up the computer and kills the one guard who I guess was in this room, because he's not supposed to be in this room, and then storms out. And we see out on the Arabian Sea, they're on a shipping container boat, and he goes and talks to Ronnie and says like, okay, here's the deal. We've seen some rogue firestorms over in Pakistan. Because of the absence of any sort of action, we have to assume the governments are involved. We're going to go get the killing. You in? And he just kind of sits there depressed for a little bit. Then we cut over to Jason and Firehawk, who are going through the quantum field. I was going to say quantum realm. And he sees like the face of Professor Stein. And he's like, I need answers. Please help me. But then Firehawk comes and grabs him. And we see the symbol for Fury, like Ronnie and Jason's combined form, before Firehawk and Jason are dragged out. And they're dumped out into the middle of this snowy field, and Firehawk just looks at Jason like, what in the hell was that? So I'm going to cut back over to Pozar and Ronnie. And Ronnie is basically like, hey, I'm ready to go help you. And he's like, yeah, you're totally not ready. You've got a lot of issues going on with you right now. Are you sure you're up for this? And he basically tells him how Ronnie and Jason are part of a set. They are a pair, and they need to be together in order to reach their full potential. However, it's not impossible for Firestorms to get more powers on their own. So it's possible that Ronnie could learn to get the powers of like manipulation and stuff like that Jason has, even without Jason being there. And Ronnie's like, what are you, I'm not ready for that. I'm deformed, I'm disabled, I can't do anything. And Pozar's like, no, you can do anything. That's the whole point of being Firestorm. And we see that his nuclear fist or whatever he's got going on his D-handed arm is still just like swirling massive amounts of energy. So he manages to knock it off for a second. He's like, just stay away from me, Pozar. And then this little device that Pozar was working on this whole time, he holds it up, and it's apparently a detector for firestorms or something like that. And he's ready to go out and use it. So cut back over to Jason and Firehawk, who are just flying through, and he's like, okay, I think I came to a conclusion, Firehawk. So when we merged, it was unstable because something about the quantum field only wants Fury. Like, other firestorms can, I guess, merge, but they aren't stable unless they are Fury. Does that make any sense? And she's like, yeah, sure, whatever. Anyway, we're out in Russia, and that's where it dumped us for some reason. And here's a flag that is the same flag that was used by the Rogue Firestorms last issue, so we must be on the right track. And he's like, well, if we're in Russia and we're doing something about firestorms, clearly Pozar must be involved. So then we get back to Pozar's on the ship, and his little thingy starts going off, and he looks up and he sees an Indian firestorm whose name is Rakshasi. And basically they just get into a fight, and she's like, oh, you're connected to these rogue firestorms somehow. And he's like, yeah, I'm hunting them, and I'm also going to be the one that takes them all out. And he zaps away her powers, as he has been known to do, and just starts beating her around. He's like, wait a minute, no. You're not just hunting them. You're the one who made them. You're responsible for them. Like, you're their father. To which point, then, a blue light shows up behind Pozar, and it turns out, I think it's Ronnie? Like, yeah, no, it's definitely Ronnie. But it's blue now. He's got a blue thing going on about him rather than his normal red. And he's like, hey, Pozar, I want to hear what she has to say, and then I'm gonna kick your butt. And he's like, okay, you whatever, sure. And that's where the issue ends. I'm still a little confused as to what's going on with the Ronnie side of things, because they did the whole thing where he like went to Pozar for help, and like he's trying to figure out, but then they went into this weird like decapitated hand thing, and in the last page he doesn't have a physical hand, but he does still have, like, the shape of a fist, just with nuclear force. I'm just confused about, like, Pozar's clearly not a good dude. But, like, it also seems that Ronnie can't make up his mind as to whether or not he actually wants his help or not. He keeps on going back and forth and back and forth, and I don't know. It's weird to me. The Jason plot's easier to follow at the very minimum, but even then, it's now intersecting with the Pozar plot, and I'm just getting a bit confused. Maybe it's on me, maybe I'm not reading it closely enough, but it just seems a little bit disjointed in terms of, like, there's so much duplicity going on with Pozar that it's actually affecting me as the reader of I don't know what's happening with Pozar, which is an issue when our main characters are very closely associated with Pozar. So overall, I'm giving this one I give it a 6.5. The fight scene between Raksashi and Pozar was pretty cool. It's got some neat moments in it, but beyond that, this basically just feels like okay, let's move these characters around. Like, literally, we had to teleport Jason and Firehawk to the other side of the world just to get them involved in this plot now. So, yeah, it's a fine issue, but it's still only worth, like, 6.5 at the most. Justice League number 10, written by Geoff Johns, art by Jim Lee. Last issue we left off with Steve Trevor being held captive by, it's Graves. I can't remember if he was named last issue or not, but Graves. And wants to know Justice League secrets and such. So this issue picks up 3 years ago with Graves making his way through the, quote, Pamir Mountains. And he comes across 3 giant fiery monster god things that he calls the Ashuras. And I guess they're guardians of some secret thing. And they are literal, like, gods, according to him. They're cast out of their, like, mountain where they were living before, and now they scavenge down here for whatever. And they say, all right, Graves, if you want help, you gotta help yourself. Come into the temple, and we will teach you all you need to know. And then we go back to Steve Trevor. He has managed to break out of his little chair he was trapped in. And as he runs over and opens up the door, he's hit with this weird spirit blast thing that's like, oh, feed us your pain, Steve Trevor. Give us your loss. And then that's it. So then we go over to Aquaman, who's saving a tipped-over cruise liner, I guess. And he's saving all these people. And all the reporters are like, hey, Aquaman, why are you on the Justice League? You kind of suck. Ha, 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 ha. To which Aquaman is, of course, nonplussed about it. Cyborg calls him up, though, and says, hey, we need you up on Watchtower. Something's going on here. He's like, all right, sure, I guess. So he goes up onto the Watchtower, and pretty much Batman lays it out of all of their villains. Not like the biggest ones, but just some of their villains have been captured and tortured by someone named Graves, all looking for information about the members of the Justice League. And they're like, okay, someone's torturing our villains. Like, that's not the worst thing to happen. And basically Cyborg lays it out of like, no, he got all of our secrets. Like, he's managed to piece together these puzzle pieces from throughout all of the villains, and he knows all of the secrets that we have, all of our weaknesses. So, like, Cyborg just lays it out that he also knows this stuff. He knows about Flash dating Patty Spivot. He knows Wonder Woman has her own book going on with her own plot. He knows that Batman doesn't trust anyone on the team, except maybe for Superman. We also find out Superman's a reporter. And there's this little brief reveal here that despite the fact that nobody knows anything about anybody else on this team except for Batman and Cyborg because he's connected to all computers and Batman because he's Batman, apparently Batman and Superman work together outside the team, and they are kind of friends. So, yeah, I guess. So anyway, we then see, okay, we need to work as a team. We don't even know each other's secrets or weaknesses. How can we work together truly that well? But before they can even do anything about it, it gets really, really cold up on the satellite, and Steve Trevor's access code to the satellite was used, to which they're like, Steve Trevor's not allowed on the satellite. Why does he have an access code? And Cyborg's like, in case he ever got tortured and had to give up some information, it's set to set off warning alarms. And then we see Graves is on the satellite. He's like, ah, Trixie, I like that. You guys are good. Anyway, I'm up here because you guys, you sit up here above the world looking down on us like you're gods. But I've met gods. You're not gods. You're just people. And you mess up. And I'm going to show the world that. So they realize Steve was in trouble. Wonder Woman goes and takes the first charge at him. To which he does that weird spirit blast thing. And we see Graves, who's just like a weird skull monster thing who has human faces on his chest and arms. And he blasts Wonder Woman, and it's like, oh, feed me your loss. And we see how Wonder Woman, in her own book, lost her mother Hippolyta. And then she just falls over to the ground, like, with, like, the Scream face just stuck on her face. To which the rest of the Justice League all attacks. And we get an intercut fight, but between everyone being hit by this spirit blast and, like, giving up their loss to Graves. And then we see Graves back, what was it, 3 years ago, with, getting the power from the Asuras, and he sees his family that he lost, and the Asuras like blast the spirit energy into him and then transform him into this thing, saying like, you will have your vengeance against those who have wronged you, and as such you will feed us, or something like that. And basically Graves leaves off with the Justice League completely annihilated, just saying the Justice League killed my family and now the world's gonna know it. Short and sweet issue, not a whole lot to it. I don't think Graves was set up well enough yet. I mean, we might still be able to get more out of it, but it feels like, okay, we did the thing where we show why he's angry and we show how he got his power set, and like, I think we're done with the setup. Maybe we're not, but it feels like we're done with it, and I don't feel like it was enough. Because he's just, I'm upset my family's dead. Like, that's 95% of it. I don't know what sets this one apart. To the fact of, he was just an author beforehand who wrote a book about the Justice League. Yes, several other books as well, but like, I don't know. I don't feel like I know him as a character. I feel like I know him just as his loss. And maybe they're going to make a point about that, but I don't know. It just seems a little bit light right now in terms of character development. Overall, though, the rest of the stuff good. I like how the Justice League was literally like, now I think it was it Superman? Superman specific? No, it was Action Comics. Showed like how they were just sitting out in a warehouse, whatever. This does feel, once you would set it aside to that, of like, okay, here's how different things have all set up and turned around here. But no, it's fine. It's an okay issue. It's not great by any means, but you know, not everyone can be. So I'm gonna give this one I'll give it a 6.5. I'm really, really right between 6.5 and 7, but I'm giving it the 6.5 just because there's not really... I feel like if the weird spirit attack thing that Graves has looked better, I'd bump it up to that 7. But it doesn't... I don't know. It feels like there's... It almost feels rushed, which, knowing Jim Lee's art schedule, it probably was. So... not the best in terms of art. It's good. It's standard Jim Lee fare, but it's not the best. So yeah, 6.5 for this. Hopefully we'll pick it up next issue. The Savage Hawkman number 10, written by Rob Liefeld and Mark Poulton, art by Joe Bennett. Last issue, Hawkman was abducted and put into some gladiatorial arena to fight for his life by a guy named Xerxes. This issue is very fast because it's basically all just that fight scene. So he's in there, and we've already missed a bit of the fight where just a couple of guys are already knocked out. We get one who has a whip, one who has electricity power, and one who, I don't know, has a club or something. And they're all lit up and whatnot, but Hawkman just goes through and beats through them. And he's like, I don't want to kill you guys, but I totally will. Just give me a reason. So goes through, knocks out the whip one, knocks out the club one. The electricity one is apparently the reigning champion. So he takes like 1 page longer to take out, but he still stands over. And then he's like, all right, I beat all your guys. And by gladiatorial rules, I can leave, which I don't think has ever been a thing. But Xerxes is like, well, good job. Now you're going to fight me. because I still got your girl, and as long as I got your girl, I can say whatever. So he jumps down into the pit, he starts fighting, and Hawkman lands a few punches, but then Xerxes sizes him up, and he's like, all right, cool. So he just keeps on laying into him and keeps on talking the whole time. He's just like, I'm going to use the nth metal for myself. Mwahahaha. To which point, Hawkman's like, yeah, okay. And he just waits for his opening, throws in a good kick, manages to toss him around. And as soon as he has him like tossed to the ground and taken out more or less, he just flies up to where Emma is. And he's like, hey, yeah, it's me. It's Carter Hall. Let's go. So he grabs Emma, starts flying up towards the roof, and Xerxes, as he's stumbling up, he's like, you can't get out of here, there's no way to escape. To which he grabs the electricity guy who's knocked on the ground, tears a hole in his suit, which I guess overloads his charge, and then just throws him up at the roof, and the roof explodes and he flies out. Mind you, once you see it after the fact, this is like a warehouse with a bunch of windows at like regular intervals, to the point of I think he could have just smashed out of any of those windows. But regardless, he breaks out, he's got Emma, and Xerxes just does that thing where he looks up and be like, we'll meet again, Hawkman, and when we do, I will have that metal. And then we see next day, Hawkman's gone back, he's looking for clues, can't find anything. He goes back to a motel where him and Emma are crashing, and he's like, all right, here's the deal, Emma. Yes, I'm Hawkman. You're kind of involved in this now. We need to keep our identities very low right now. So we're going to hop on this ship that's going to take us across the sea, and then we'll deal with stuff over there when we get there, okay? And Emma's like, okay, just one question. Am I your sidekick now? Because that would be wonderful in my personal life. But So elsewhere, we see a guy who was actually at the gladiatorial match is talking to someone on a little hologram thing saying like, oh, Xerxes messed up, but I will get Hawkman really and truly, sir. And the guy's, or sorry, no, this guy's the boss. The dude in the hologram is the sir, or is the person who's his underling. And he's like, I will take care of this where Xerxes failed. We will get that nth metal before Carter Hall understands its true potential and how to truly use it. And yeah, he just says he's going to need a full battalion to fight Hawkman. Anyway, cut over to the shipyard. Emma and Carter are getting onto a boat, and we see a guy off in the distance with some binoculars looking at them saying like, Hawkman, I hope that you're ready for a good trip because Pike is here to fight you. And the guy's name is Pike, and he just looks like every other generic ass like 90s heroes. There are at least 8 belts and 7 pouches. So, yeah. Did I ever express to you how excited I was that Rob Liefeld was writing this book? Which is to say, not at all excited. It's like last issue was just the setup to get into this gladiatorial thing, and like they spent, I don't even know, like 3 pages setting up Xerxes as a villain, and then they just, okay, he's done now, bye. And yes, they made it so he can come back, but it just felt, this entire thing was just a lame excuse to get Emma to know who Carter like was. Like, we didn't even bother having it be like an arc to like deal with this and like set it up. She's just like, no, okay, I get it now. Okay, let's go. What? No, this should be a much bigger deal. Regardless, it's just not, it's not a good issue. It's very disjointed. They introduce this dude standing in the gladiatorial match. Then on one page they reveal that, no, actually, he's the bigger bad. And then he still doesn't do anything. They just introduce another underling to go attack Hawkman. I don't know. It's just dumb. I'm just not a fan of it anymore. I thought that maybe it had some potential in that first trade I was doing, but I don't know. It's just not there, especially not with Rob Liefeld writing. So overall, I'm going to go ahead and give it a... The art is good. The art is decent enough quality that I'm going to give it a 6. But if the art was even a fraction less than it currently is, I would give that thing a 5 or less, because it's just not worth it otherwise. All-Star Western number 10, written by Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Moritat. Last issue we left off with Tallulah, some random woman popping in, and being attacked in a wing casino by a weird red-cloaked man who was defending the rich people. This issue picks up exactly where we left off, with Alan Wayne complaining to a man named Lucius Bennett, saying, like, this is absolutely unacceptable. You cannot be throwing people out of my casino. And he's like, I will pay you back whatever money it costs, and I'll deal with the law enforcement. I do have my own connections, wink, wink. And he's like, that's not, dude, what are you talking about? And he's like, oh, don't you understand? This is my city. I'm the one who rules it. And Alan's like, dude, no, I'm Alan Wayne. I've literally built half the skyline, and I have just as much as right to claim the city as you do. And Bennett's like, oh, okay, well, we'll see based off of that property that we're both after. You may want to turn it into a park, but the economy does not lie. People need places to live. Goodbye, Alan. So it's just, a rich person battle. Meanwhile, we see Tallulah outside being comforted by Jonah, who then sees the red-cloaked figure, and they're like, all right, see you soon. Meanwhile, over at Arkham's place, Tallulah has been changed out of her bounty hunter gear into this weird floral lacy dress, and Arkham's tending to her wounds or whatever. Jonah is like, she's going to be okay? And he's like, yeah, no, just a couple bumps and bruises. I did have to change her, and she has significant scars on her body, to which Jonah's like, yes, I'm well aware of her body. And Arkham's like, oh. And then Jonah is, of course, annoyed that he's doing that sort of thing where he's trying to get into his head. So he explains she's been looking for a guy named Bennett, to which Arkham's like, well, that rich guy in that party was called Lucius Bennett. It's like, well, that's probably the guy. So he's going to go out looking for her, but she doesn't have any friends. I'm the only one that she can even kind of say is anything close to that. So just stay here and watch over her for me. And Jonah heads off as Arkham's mother is literally like screaming in the background for Amadeus. She's got her own issues. So meanwhile, Jonah is going back to the casino. He wants to talk to Alan Wayne. Some bodyguards stop him, but then he's very easily able to get through. It's not by fighting, though. He just tells him, like, I'm here to see Alan. He's going to want to see me. So he tells her that he knows Tallulah personally and that she's there to go after the Bennett guy and what he did to her. Then we get 2 pages of the Court of Owls, which I thought we were done with this after the Night of the Owls technical crossover story last issue, but no, this is still it. And basically, they're just saying how there's a group called the something of Cain. I can't even remember what it's called. The Followers of Cain. And they follow the crime Bible. And there are 5 groups of them, all with their own leaders. One for thievery, assassination, extortion, prostitution, and terrorism. The 5 branches of crime, I guess. And the only way that the Court of Owls is going to be able to stop this group is by taking out the heads of each of those groups. So they're going to use Jonah Hex and Tallulah as their unwitting pawns in order to take out Bennett, who actually is apparently the head of I believe it's the extortion one. So yeah, it's just this wildly circuitous plan, and they're all looking forward to doing that sort of thing. So then we get to Tallulah waking up, and she is not happy that she's been changed into a floral dress. She immediately strips out of it, and Arkham's like, oh, good heavens, oh my. And she's threatening him to go find some clothes, nothing that's frilly or whatever like that, and also to go make her some breakfast. And so he does so. He gets her suitable clothes, but he can't help staring at her, and his internal thing is just like, she is like she has a lot of scarring and stuff, but you can tell that she's beautiful. But also she is like quite literally Jonah Hex just in a woman's body, like personality-wise. So there's a lot to unpack here. But she notices him staring, comes at her with a knife and being like, if you keep staring at me, I'm going to attack you. And he basically breaks down like, oh no, I'm a doctor. It was all, medical. I'm a friend of Jonah's. And he's like, oh, Jonah, was he stopping by? Because if he was, I'm not going to need... Basically saying she's going to bang Jonah whenever Jonah shows up. And right on cue, Jonah walks in laughing at the scene of Arkham being held at knife point. To which Arkham remarks how unsettling it is to hearing Jonah laughing. Then they... Hex and Tallulah make out. He picks her up, throws her over his shoulder, goes up to what I can only assume is Arkham's bedroom, and says, "See you in a bit." So, yeah. Anyway, Arkham then goes to the local, I guess, penitentiary. And he was summoned because there's this one guy who's just sitting there talking crazy. And he goes and talks to him, and he says, like, "Look, someone's after me. It's an assassin. I wasn't supposed to see them meeting, but I saw them meeting. I was stuck up on a roof, and now they're after me because I know they exist." And he basically tells Amadeus, like, the owls. The owls are the ones who are after me, and they're going to send their assassin. He's like, "Okay, you're clearly stressed out. I'm going to just give you a little sedative," to which the guy freaks out over because he thinks he's about to be poisoned or whatever. Guard comes in, restrains him. Arkham gives him the sedative, and as Arkham is walking out of the room with the guard laying the guy down, he hears a crash right behind him. He turns around, gets the door back open, and sees both the guard and the convict are killed. And it was at most like 15 seconds with no point of entry but a skylight 15 feet up. So he's like, that's impossible. But he looks around for any sort of clue, and he finds a single owl feather. And he's like, all right, I'm going to have to talk to Jonah. And that's it. It's good. I think they're doing a good job of developing the character of Tallulah. I kind of brushed over a lot of it, but she is very gruff while also having her own little thing of her reasons for doing this. I think her pairing up with Hex is a good way to develop both their characters. I like how Arkham's just been a good comedic foil for this entire series. I really have no problems with that at all. So, no, it's solid throughout. I'm definitely enjoying it. I'm very surprised we're continuing with the Court of Owls stuff. I thought for sure that was more of a Night of the Owls tie-in, but no, like, they set it up before the tie-in happened, and they're continuing it well afterwards. So I'm interested to see how well that's going to continue forward. But for this particular issue, I'm going to go ahead and give it I'll give it a 7.5. It feels good. It's got a good story being set up in it. And yeah, I'm just interested to see where it goes. Voodoo number 10, written by Joshua Williamson, art by Sami Basri. Last issue we left off with both Voodoo and Priscilla going to Europa, the sixth moon of Jupiter, because there's apparently a dead city of Daemonites there with some super weapon. This issue is both showing them getting to the planet, but it is split. It's intercut, but it's two separate stories, so I'm just going to give you all of one and then the other. So Voodoo, she has arrived on the planet. And when she arrives, she finds this race of Daemonites that are very different from normal Daemonites, like completely separately evolved. And they're all fighting each other. And so she tries to sneak by without being noticed. She accidentally gets caught in a trap and is bound up by chains. And they're like, hey, something landed on this planet. That's fresh. All right, well, let's bring it to the master, to camp. And she's like, using my shape-shifting ability, I can just get out of this. But I'm just going to see what they can reveal to me. So she lets them take her captive, and she, as she's listening to their stuff, she finds out that they are all cannibals, and that's why they have gone generations after generations of literally devouring each other in order to survive, and that's why they've evolved so separately. But as they are talking about eating her, she just shapeshifts out of the chains, and she's like, all right, so here's the thing. Tell me where the weapon is, or else I'm going to rip you all to shreds. But as she does so, their master named Mole Stone jumps in, and he's like a supersized one. And they start to fighting, and Mole Stone is apparently actually somewhat intelligent, and he's like, oh, I smell you're a failed genetic creation of the Daemonites, aren't you? And she's like, I am anything but a failure. I was sent here by Hellspawn himself in order to get the weapon. And then Mole Stone's like, oh, you're with Hellspawn? Okay, yeah, no, we live to serve him. He is absolutely our master. Well, yeah, no, I'll take you over to that thing right now. Let's go. And so she's like, all right, that seems a little bit too easy. So they arrive at these gates, and he's literally just explaining everything. He's just like, yeah, I always thought they would come back for us. They never did. I eventually just came to terms with how we were abandoned, and we've been living our own lives here. And so he's like, okay, it's cool that you're so cool about this. And so then he stops, and he's like, all right, we can't go any further. What you want is inside there. And he shows this cave that's blocked by two giant human-like statues, like Roman guard-looking things. And she's like, why can't we go in? And he's like, well, the blue flame is inside, but we aren't allowed to get in. He's like, why not? And he pushes two of his like minions out closer towards the gate, and he's like, go on, show her what happens. And they're like, oh god. And as they make their way closer to the cave, the statues wake up and just tear them apart and then go back to sitting. And he's like, that's fine, I never liked them anyway. Anyway, yeah, it says that only the chosen one can manage to get in through this gate. And Voodoo's like, well, that's perfectly fine because Hellspawn chose me for a reason. I must be the chosen one. And she marches her way towards the gate. She's like, I believe in myself. And that's all I need. And then the statues wake up and start to attack her. So, you know, not so much the chosen one. That's actually where the issue ends. But the other plot is Priscilla and the rest of the, I guess, Black Razors are making their way through space in this Daemonite ship. Priscilla's controlling it with her mind. And apparently Priscilla doing this is in a lot of pain, but she is still managing to hold on to focus. And then the other Black Razors of Flynn and Magnus are talking like, you know, Lincoln, you gave up this ship to a woman who literally just like last week was imprisoned by us. And now you're just letting her fly us into deep space. I think maybe you lost your edge here. And Flynn's talking about like almost doing a little bit of a coup against Lincoln. And Lincoln just shuts that shit down hard. But we see that Walker is standing up for Lincoln. He's like, you don't talk to your superior officer that way. To which Magnus is like lifting him up off the ground. And he's like, you know, I agree with Flynn. I think we're walking into a trap. And I don't like the way you're talking to him. So he just throws him aside. Walker bumps into Priscilla, knocking her out temporarily because she was already like highly in pain. And as such, the ship just starts flying wildly through space. But they are still on a crash course with Europa. So they're trying to figure out, okay, we're about to collide with the moon. How do we fix this? What do we do? And Priscilla's still out. Walker's trying to wake her. Finally, as she's getting closer and closer to the planet, she snaps back awake because she senses Voodoo. She gets the ship back under somewhat control, but it's still a very, very hard landing. And it looks like the ship is pretty much wrecked. And as they get out, they see that they are surrounded on all sides by these Daemonite off-breeds, or what do you want to call them, the cannibals. So yeah, two separate stories, but they both managed to get themselves to the same place. I do like the idea of Voodoo being so dead set on the, yes, I am the chosen one, just to be smacked down hard again. Just like, oh wait, no, crap, Jesus. So no, I'm a fan of that. Art, Sami Basri still knocking it out of the park. Everything here looks fantastic. My only thing is that these Black Razors, the space crew or whatever they're called, just feel a little bit like, I know they're giving them personalities, but the fact that these highly trained military guys are just so eager to go on a coup just seems a little bit weird to me. I know it's having to set up some form of tension and having to do something, but it still feels just a little bit off for like this trusted team of guys to be like, nah, actually, we're just going to override your opinion here, boss. So, I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Overall, though, I am going to rate this one an 8. A lot of that comes down to, strangely enough, the leader of the cannibals. I just like the how they did the constant switching of expectations there of like, he's this big hulking brute, but actually he's the smartest one. But now they're going to fight. But actually he just totally is like, no, yeah, you're totally cool as soon as he hears about Hellspawn. Like, I don't know. I like the fact that he's not as it immediately appears, which I guess is kind of the theme of this whole book, more or less. But 8 for it right now, and we'll see how it continues from here. Teen Titans number 10, written by Scott Lobdell, art by Brett Booth. This technically picks up after Superboy number 10, where they were on an island of dinosaurs, Superboy and Wonder Girl, and then it said, check out this issue. So this issue picks up with Kid Flash outrunning a dinosaur, and he gets some vines and stuff like that, wraps it around the dinosaur's mouth and claws and beak and all that, and he's like, okay, now that that's taken care of, let me wake up the team. So he picks up Red Robin, wakes him up, and tells him, like, hey, we're on an island of dinosaurs. Also, I need to go get the rest of the team. My bad. And he goes off and he gets Bunker and Solstice as well. So then they're all safe up in a tree where they can reorganize. And then we see the dinosaur that he tied up, and right next to that dinosaur, the trap door with Superboy and Wonder Girl opens up, and they get out, and it's like, oh, someone attacked a dinosaur, and it looks positively harmless, unlike that T-Rex that attacked us back in Superboy number 10. Wonder Girl goes over, unties it, and says, whoever tied this thing up must be a complete idiot. Anyway, we're friends now. Let's go find the rest of our team. So, okay, for the rest of this issue, there's not really much of a through line. Like, there is technically, but it's more so just a collection of moments. So I'll just do my best here. Moment 1, Red Robin tells the rest of the team, like, hey, because this team is awful, I'm going to go fly up in the sky and try to get some recon. To which Bunker then joins him against his will, and he starts insulting Bunker of just like, oh, what, you expect to be helpful to me? And Bunker's like, dude, I don't know what's going on right now, but you need to back off. It's like, you were the one who convinced us to join this team, that we're all stronger together. Like, you, even if you don't want to be the team leader, you don't have to run away like this when things start going bad. And so then Red Robin gets attacked by, or not attacked, he gets tackled by Superboy, whereas Bunker gets attacked by Wonder Girl, and they're like, oh, it's so nice to see you, we finally found each other. And everyone's like really cool with Superboy, which I don't feel like is earned yet, but they are. So regardless, they Wonder Girl and Superboy later on, as Bunker and Red Robin are in a waterfall cleaning themselves, they're like, maybe we should tell them about the underside of the island that also was like a mirror image of this island. And they're like, yeah, probably should. All right, I'll go talk to him. Superboy goes over. Meanwhile, Red Robin and Bunker are talking, and they're like, yeah, I think the Teen Titans are done, Bunker. And Bunker's like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, we lost Skitter, and we lost Artemis, and also, you know, a whole bunch of other teens died and stuff like that. So, nah, I don't feel like the team is really all for the best right now. And then we get 2 pages where Flash is running with dinosaurs. He stops and he talks to Solstice, and Solstice is like, oh, I'm so happy to spend this time with you. And he's like, yeah, I am too. By the way, let's make out. And they do. So that was the thing. Superboy goes and talks to Red Robin. By the way, Bunker tells him, like, oh no, you got to keep the team together. And Red Robin's like, maybe, we'll see. So Superboy goes and talks to Red Robin, and he basically doesn't tell him anything about how the island works. He just tells him, like, hey, thanks for, like, rescuing me and whatnot, and I hope that me and you can, like, be cool and, like, we're good friends or whatnot. And Red Robin's like, dude, you're, like, barely born. It's going to take time for you to understand this. No problem. They shake hands, and they have their own thing. Then there is a part where Bunker is just reclining on his purple bricks, and he's attacked by a dinosaur. But as he dissipates his bricks, he realizes, wait a minute, some of these are real bricks. What are real bricks doing here? And he comes to the realization that this might be Danny, like Danny the Street, who was, I guess, possibly nearly destroyed during the culling. So they scour the beach, they find all the pieces of Danny that they possibly can, and they reassemble it into this tiny little pile of bricks and other debris. And then they find a note that comes up in a bottle that must have been written by Danny. And Red Robin reads it, and he's basically like, hey, I'm not going to make it, but it's been an honor fighting by your side. Allow me to at least bring you back to where you belong, because I can teleport you guys. And Red Robin's like, no, you'll die, Danny. And he's like, yeah, I know, that's kind of what I was saying. And Wonder Girl's like, hey, he knew the risks, he got involved with the team. If this is how he wants to go out, let him do it. So Red Robin says, okay, take us home. And so they all of a sudden teleport back to an alley in some random ass city. Looks like China. And maybe Danny's dead, maybe not, but we just see that the alley that they appear in is labeled with a street sign as Danny the Alley. So that's a thing. Meanwhile, half a world away, back in D.C., so yes, I assume they did land in China, Amanda Waller is looking over someone who died. It's hard to tell. I think it's just someone, it's a teen who died. That's all they say. They don't even say who it is. Regardless, Amanda Waller's like, I can't believe I sent these kids to their death. I'm so racked with guilt. Anyway, we need to draw the line somewhere. And so she activates Operation Meta Dead Stop, and to contact the gardener to bring him in. What does any of that mean? I don't know. Okay, all right, so first off, I'm still waiting for them to write Kid Flash in a way that doesn't immediately like set me on edge, and it's not there yet. And now they gave him a love interest, or at least a relationship, and I just still not okay with that. When did this like real closeness with Superboy develop? I understand wanting to save him, but like they're treating him as like the fact of when Superboy went and just like tackled Red Robin out of the air to give him a hug, he just did that classic like big brother thing of like putting him in between his like pit and like holding his head like that. What? When did they get that level of close? And then Bunker does the same thing and like hugs Superboy like full on as hard as he can. It's just, I don't know. Maybe I missed something somewhere, but it didn't seem like they were on that level yet. Other than that, I don't know. It's a two-parter when you consider the Superboy thing. It's just a thing of, okay, this, then that. And honest to God, they barely feel connected. Yes, they're both on an island in the middle of nowhere, but like, we don't get any answers to this island. We get absolutely nothing. They're just teleported off the island. It's like, okay, you're free now, bye. Like, where was this? Why were there dinosaurs? Why was it shaped like a question mark? Like, so many questions here, but whatever. Overall, I give this a 5.5. Honestly, it probably doesn't deserve that, but it's on the heels of like, what are we doing with this book? Like, okay, you spent so long setting up this culling, and now it's done, and you technically failed, but like you're just having a nice little island retreat. Like, what are we doing here? What's the purpose anymore? Now you want to literally to see Red Robin want to dissolve the team. It's just, what? What are we doing? 5.5 until you can figure out what in the hell is going on in this book. I, Vampire, number 10, written by Joshua Hale Fialkov, art by Andrea Sorrentino. I'm just going to be upfront with you. I adore this issue. Like, 200% I love this issue. So I'm not even going to be able to break it down, like, page for page here. This is just going to be like a general flavor. So last issue we left off with Mary challenging Andrew to a fight in order to see who rules like the vampires, and John and Tig being held captive by the Van Helsings, who are flying a helicopter and plane like fleet across the sea. So this issue, the first half of it, the pictures, the panels themselves are the fight scene between Andrew and Mary, and he's like, you don't even know the half of my power, you don't want to do this, and she's like, well, show me. And it's just so perfectly orchestrated of just, you get the feel of like how massively outclassed Mary is in this fight, how she's putting in everything it takes in order to fight against Andrew, and yet he's just effortlessly doing like nothing and still managing to beat her. Like, there's this one part where she transforms into her wolf form, and in the foreground you have Andrew standing up against her, like almost taken aback, but then in the background you see him just effortlessly just batting away her claws and stuff like that without even like thinking about her or breaking a sweat. So no matter what, he has the upper hand. This entire time it's going on, the dialogue, the overtop stuff is John talking to the leader of the Van Helsings on the airplane and basically just having a philosophical debate about like why the Van Helsings are more morally right to kill vampires than vampires are to kill normal people. And like there's just back and forth of like moral objectivism, moral relativism, like how one side is for the betterment of these people, yet the other side is for the benefit of these people. And they just are going through this whole debate as to whether or not anyone here can be regarded as good in any way, and why Andrew is still someone that they should put their trust in when it comes down to this sort of thing, and how it seems like he is letting Mary live and that is putting the world in danger, but like how that he's still the guy to trust here, at least on John's side, whereas the Van Helsings disagree entirely. And then the Van Helsings make their they guy gets a whisper, and it cuts back to them for a little section here, and he basically tells them like, okay, here's the thing, we've been talking in metaphors this whole time, let me give you another one. Napalm, the entire world would tell you that it was made by a Harvard scientist as a jellied gasoline. My favorite quote here is, history, of course, is a dirty, lying whore. God, I love this book. So John realizes, okay, the Van Helsings created napalm as a way to fight vampires. It's literally sticky fire. It may not kill them, but it is enough to put them out. And so he lays down the stuff. He's like, look, our people date all the way back to Egyptian times. That's when vampires first showed up, and we believe it may have even been this Cain that was showing up in the iVampire event. But regardless, he raised up some vampires, and we managed to figure out that staking them and chopping off their head was enough to kill them. And so that's what we do now. We fight them. And he goes on this extra little bit of like, the next step, once we eradicate the vampires, is obvious. It's the superheroes. Like, this world is, like, if the vampires take over, then it's not mankind that rules anymore. It's the vampires. The superheroes are the next step to that. Like, yes, they seem altruistic right now, but they could just as easily turn, and they will enslave humanity because we have no way to fight against them if we let them take over. So that's the goal. Anyway, at this point, the planes finally reach this plane in Utah. Mary's, of course, knocked on her ass. And the planes start dropping napalm bombs on just this massive horde of vampires, which, by the Van Helsing's estimation, is 60% of all the vampire population. So fire's breaking out. Every one of the vampires starts burning. Andrew puts up a massive shield and uses backwards magic like Zatanna to put out the fires. And apparently Andrew's like, I thought that John would be able to reason with the Van Helsings. That's why I had him sent there. And Mary's like, you sent for the Van Helsings, you stupid bastard? So then the Van Helsings, we see them go full on like Hydra pose, and they all start jumping out of the airplanes and parasailing down. And they're all wearing these little Anubis statues around their neck. But they start parasailing down, and Andrew's like, hey, they're coming. You will not kill them. You can incapacitate them. You will not kill them. And Mary's like, the hell, they won't. So Andrew flies up and tells them, like, hey, we're not going to kill you. Just don't attack us. But at that point, someone fires off a stake into Andrew's back, which at this point doesn't kill him anymore. He's far more powerful than that. But it lands, and it's just chaos. Like, everyone's attacking everyone else. And even the leader of the Van Helsings, he's like, all right, look, we fought fire with fire for long enough. Right now, we're fighting fire with a nuclear warhead. We're going to take care of this right here. All 60% of these vampires are going to be gone today. And he jumps out of the plane, along with the two pilots on their plane, to which Tig and John realize this. And he's like, I love this thing here of, those are the pilots, aren't they? And John says, sure, looks like it. And Tig's like, I hate you so much. So at this point, Mary's like, dude, these guys are going down easy. Like, this is not a problem at all. We are very easily able to win this. And Andrew's just lamenting over the fact of like, oh God, what did I do? How did I make this happen? But then Andrew looks up and he's like, Mary, we're in trouble. And Mary's like, what are you talking about? We're winning. He's like, no, seriously. They're coming back to life. And we see all of the Van Helsings and their little Anubis statues are allowing them to basically come back to life. And the bottom text for Tune In Next issue says vampires versus zombies. This issue is a 9. This issue is like, no, this issue is a 9.5. I love everything this issue did. The philosophical talk over top of the awesome fight scene. It sets up so much. It's such a smart book. And then just when it gets to the part of like, okay, we've done our thing, they bring in vampires versus zombies on a massive horde scale. This book is so goddamn good. Jesus. I love it. I cannot even begin to tell you how much I love this book. And I'm so sad because I think it ends in like 2 issues. But it's still fantastic. And I'm so happy that we at least got this much of the story out before it got canceled. So I am super interested in how we're going from here. I can't wait to see the twists and turns it takes. God, I love this book. Justice League Dark number 10, written by Jeff Lemire, art by Mikel Janin. Last issue we left off with the team beating Felix Faust and getting a box, which is actually a map to the Books of Magic. And this issue is pretty much just explaining more about that. So we have the entire team has made their way to some sort of urban setting, and Black Orchid has been possessed by Deadman in order to make it so she doesn't, object to all this, because she's more of an Argus member than she is a Justice League Dark member. And Dr. Mist is also there, despite being an Argus member, because he's like, no, this is a books of magic. This should not go into the hands of the government, like 200%. But he insists that Black Orchid will be good. So Deadman depossesses her, to which she immediately tries to throw a punch at Constantine. Dr. Mist talks her down, and Constantine uses a magic key in order to get to a new place called the House of Mystery. And we get a brief explanation of the House of Mystery is a magical place at the intersection of reality and limbo. And as such, there are twin houses, the House of Mystery and the House of Secrets, and also like the rooms change constantly. It's crazy. So everyone makes their way inside, and Constantine's like, yeah, don't open up any doors unless I give you the go-ahead. Also, I have a demon butler. His name is Nal, and I want him in, like, a bet, pretty much. He's bound to Constantine's will. So Constantine's like, all right, get some tea, and let's start talking through this. Then we cut over to Xanadu, who's watching all this happen through, like, scrying stuff. And she closes her eyes and still has a vision of the future of just flames and dead bodies constantly. And she thought that would end after the Eye Vampire crossover, but it hasn't. In fact, it's only gotten more real in her mind. And then she sees that the body of Constantine has actually been replaced with Black Orchid, who of course was a shapeshifter. And so she then looks behind her and sees Constantine holding the 4 books of magic, and he's like, that's right, I found them all, and I'm rewriting reality as I need to, and I'm letting you witness this, and you know why? And she's like, oh God, why? And he's like, so that you can stop me. For the love of God, don't let me get these books. They are terrible for me. Just stop this from happening. You have to find him. And then she wakes up and is like, him? Who the hell's him? So then we cut back into the House of Mysteries, and basically they're talking about what they should do with this map. And Constantine gives a rundown of like, okay, here's what the books of magic are. They basically, Mordru and, sorry, no, they were the books that like may actually be the source of magic for the different 4 walks of magic, I guess, which is life, death, chaos, and order. And as such, they were cast across the globe by an angered god to make sure man could never have such knowledge. So then Mordru and Merlin came together, and they used all their magic and tried to discern the location of the books. And when they finally were able to, Mordru turned on Merlin. They fought, and the map was hidden. It was rumored to have been destroyed in the tussle, but clearly it wasn't, because they got it right here. And at this point, Andrew Bennett, aka Eye Vampire, he just bails. He's like, look, I'm not really in on all this. I have my own book, and I'm going to go. And he leaves. And they're like, well, I'm sure he'll be back. And Deadman's like, I don't think he's going to be back. He's pretty sure he said he doesn't want to be back. But then John Constantine reveals that by entering into the House of Mysteries, whenever the owner of the house wants you back, he can just summon you there at his will, which is, of course, Constantine, who owns the house. He won it in a bet. So, yeah. Constantine can just summon them no matter what. So Deadman and Zatanna storm off, and Black Orchid and Dr. Mist also have a little aside to talk about what they should be doing. So Zatanna and Deadman are like, should we be dealing with this? Okay, yes, probably, because we shouldn't let Constantine have decisions on how the books of magic should be used. So yeah, we need to keep an eye on him. And then Black Orchid and Dr. Mist are like, should we be reporting this to Argus? And Dr. Mist is like, no, this is too much for that. Like, we need to keep this under lock and figure out what to do with it. And then Zatanna, Deadman, Dr. Mist, and Black Orchid are all standing together like, wait a minute, who's watching Constantine? And then there's a giant magical explosion, and 3 demons are let out into the room. And they're apparently just called the Demons 3, Abnegazar, Wrath, and Gast. And I'll get to it in a minute. But then we cut over to Argus headquarters, where Felix Faust is being held captive, and they've they're trying out this thing of a magic dampener on him, which may or may not work, but they're giving it a go. And Steve Trevor's coming in, and he's like, all right, here's the deal. Our entire team disappeared along with whatever you were guarding. Where are they? And Felix is like, uh-oh. Looks like you've been betrayed, Steve Trevor. And he's like, how do you know my name? Are you using magic? And he turns up the voltage on the magic dampener. To which Felix just keeps on pushing through it. And he's like, don't worry. I'll find them soon enough because I'm going to be the one hunting them down. And he's like, what are you talking about? You're trapped in here. He's like, oh, no. See, I left a booby trap on the map. It summons 3 demons who are all servants to me. And they're going to come here and they're going to break me out of this place. Which, yeah. So we see them fighting the demons. Dr. Mist is actually doing quite a bit. Apparently his whole thing is that he can absorb magic and turn it on his enemies. So he's got a decent power set on him. Black Orchid just tries to tackle one of them. But in the end, the 3 demons get their hands on the map and break their way out of the limbo realm that the House of Mystery was set in. And so he's like, okay, well, I guess now we know what Felix Faust's plan was. He let himself get caught, so that way he would... Because he couldn't actually open up the map himself. It took someone else doing it for whatever reason. So, yeah, now the demons are breaking into Argus and going to attack Steve Trevor and break out Felix Faust. I like it. I think it's solid. I did think, like... I feel that Jeff Lemire probably didn't actually want Andrew Bennett on the team that much. And that was, I forget who was writing it beforehand, but that was whoever that guy's plan was. And then when Jeff Lemire took over, he's like, I'll include him for 1 issue just so he isn't like immediately like written off. But at the earliest possible convenience, I'm getting rid of him. And so he did. I still think Andrew Bennett looks weird when it's not drawn by Andrea Sorrentino, but regardless, so be it. The rest of the book, it's fine. It's solid. I do like the mystery being set up in terms of, okay, John maybe at some point in the future does get these books of magic, but he is actually setting up his own demise in the future. So I don't know. There's an interesting story there being told. I'm looking forward to seeing how it wraps up. But overall, no, Mikel Janen's art, fantastic. He's always been a very skilled artist. Story being told, I like it. There's no real qualms I really have with this issue at all, so I'm going to go ahead and give it a 8. I think it's very well done. And my only issue I think I could really have is they got to deliver on Felix. Like, they're setting him up really well here, but they need to be able to stick the landing on it. Because if he was able to think this far in advance, I want him to be a capable villain. So 8 for now. We'll see if they can keep it up. And that's it. That's all the comics that came out from DC Comics this June 27th, 2012. And with it, we have finished up month number 10 of this show. Is the 10th month ever really worth a milestone? Usually people just wait it out for the 12th, but 10 in itself is kind of a milestone number. A little bit, if you squint real hard. Anyway, next week, we have the 4th of July. Is DC Comics going to be all patriotic? I highly doubt it, but let's take a look. We have the number 11 issues of Batwing, Detective Comics, Action Comics, Red Lanterns, Green Arrow, Justice League International, Stormwatch, and Animal Man. Additionally, we have the number 3 issues of Earth 2, World's Finest, GI Combat, and Dial H, as well as the number 5 issue of the miniseries Night Force. You may notice I said Animal Man, but I did not say Swamp Thing, despite the fact that those books pretty much come as a package set. This is the first week we'll have both of them on different weeks. Swamp Thing was pushed a week for some reason. I genuinely have not bothered to check why, but we will deal with all those comics next time. This time, I still have to tell you my Twitter, because contracts. So, Twitter at DC Comics Podcast. You can hit me up there with any sort of thoughts you have on the comics I read this week, last week, next week, like 10 weeks ago. Just tell me about your thoughts on comics. I'm genuinely going to pretend like I'm interested. Also, we have a Patreon that you can donate to if you want. As low as $1 a month on Mild Fuzz TV. You can get something. It's there. There's a reward tier. I know it's there. I haven't checked it recently, and I'm certainly not going to give you anything myself. You know, this has come off as a very adversarial ending here. I'm not trying to sound like I don't care about you. Anyway, I'm going to call it a night. Thank you very much for listening / watching, and I hope that you will tune in next week as well. And always try to remember that if it ain't broke, don't fix it.